My name is Penelope, and I'm 27 years old. I still remember the look on my father's face when he saw me at my sister Jessica's wedding after 9 years of silence. His face drained of colour as if he'd seen a ghost. "Why are you still alive?" he whispered loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Those 5 words confirmed what I had suspected all these years. He had wanted me gone. What he didn't know was that karma had been patiently waiting all this time, ready to strike when he least expected it. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to hear how karma finally caught up to the man who wished his own daughter dead. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. I grew up in a beautiful colonial-style house in Connecticut with a view of the ocean that took your breath away. Our family seemed perfect from the outside. My father Thomas was a successful financial advisor with his own firm. My mother Elizabeth was a kind and gentle schoolteacher, and my little sister Jessica was 2 years younger than me. Those early years were filled with so much love and happiness that sometimes I wonder if I imagined them. My father and I had a special bond when I was younger. Every weekend he would take me fishing at the local pier. He taught me how to bait a hook, how to cast a line, and most importantly, how to be patient. The best things in life come to those who wait, Penny. He would tell me, using his special nickname for me that no one else was allowed to use. When I turned 10, he started teaching me about financial literacy, concepts most kids my age couldn't comprehend. He seemed so proud when I grasped complex ideas quickly. "You have a mind for business just like your old man," he would say, tousling my hair. Those words meant everything to me. Mum was the emotional heart of our family. She made our house feel like a home with freshly baked cookies, warm hugs and bedtime stories. Jessica was my shadow, always wanting to do everything I did. I taught her how to ride a bike, how to braid her hair, and how to stand up to the bullies at school. We were inseparable, sharing secrets and dreams in our bunk beds at night. Summer trips to Cape Cod were our family tradition. Dad would rent the same beach house every year, and we'd spend 2 weeks collecting seashells, building sandcastles, and watching the sunset over the ocean. Those memories are painted in golden hues in my mind, the last remnants of what once was. Everything changed on a rainy night in October when I was 13. We were driving home from my piano recital. Mum was so proud that I had finally mastered Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata after months of practice. The roads were slick with rain and visibility was poor. I remember Mum turning around to hand me a small celebration gift, a delicate silver bracelet with a music note charm. Then came the screeching of tires, the blinding headlights, the sickening crunch of metal against metal, and then darkness. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later with a concussion, a broken arm, and cuts all over my face from the shattered glass. But I was the lucky one. Mum had suffered severe spinal injuries and was in a coma. The doctors weren't sure if she would ever wake up. During those first few days, Dad barely left Mum's side. He looked hollow, like someone had scooped out his soul. When he did come to see me, something had changed in his eyes. The warmth was gone, replaced by something cold and distant. At first I thought it was just worry for Mum, but even after she stabilized, that coldness remained. And it was directed only at me. "You should have been more careful," he said one night, sitting by my hospital bed. "You distracted her, didn't you? With that damn bracelet?" I was confused and hurt. "But Dad, I didn't ask for the bracelet. Mum just..." "Don't make excuses," he snapped, cutting me off. "Actions have consequences, Penelope." He didn't call me Penny anymore. When Mum finally woke from her coma a month later, we discovered she was partially paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors said she might regain some mobility with intensive physical therapy, but she would likely need assistance for the rest of her life. Dad hired a full-time nurse named Nancy to help care for Mum, and slowly he began spending less and less time at home. Meanwhile, his attitude toward me continued to deteriorate. When I returned to school, he no longer helped with my homework or asked about my day. At dinner, he would engage Jessica in conversation, while barely acknowledging my presence. It was as if I had become invisible, or worse, an unwelcome reminder of something he wanted to forget. A week after my 14th birthday, which Dad forgot entirely, I came home to find my belongings had been moved from my bright, spacious bedroom on the 2nd floor to a converted storage room in the basement. The walls were bare concrete. The window was small and faced the neighbor's fence, and the air was perpetually damp. "Your sister needs more space for her dance equipment," Dad explained curtly when I confronted him. "She's going to regional competitions now. It's important." "What about what's important to me?" I wanted to scream, but the words died in my throat when I saw the warning in his eyes, a silent threat that things could get worse if I complained, and they did get worse. While Jessica received new clothes, the latest iPhone, and expensive dance lessons, I had to make do with hand-me-downs and the bare necessities. When Christmas came around, the disparity became painfully obvious. Jessica unwrapped a mountain of gifts, designer clothes, jewelry, and even her own laptop. My pile consisted of a plain sweater, socks, and school supplies. "Thank you," I said mechanically, fighting back tears. Dad didn't even look at me. "You're welcome. Try to be grateful for once." Mum noticed, of course. I could see the pain in her eyes, but she was fighting her own battles. The once vibrant, energetic woman was now confined to a wheelchair, dependent on others for the simplest tasks. Still, she tried to bridge the growing divide in our family. "Thomas, why don't you take Penelope to that science exhibit she's been talking about?" she suggested one evening. "She's doing so well in her biology class." Dad barely looked up from his phone. "I'm too busy. Maybe next time." There never was a next time. The year after the accident, I noticed a pattern. Dad started coming home later and later, often smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't Mom's. When I asked Mom about it, a shadow crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Your father works very hard for this family," she said. "Sometimes adults need to unwind after a stressful day." But I wasn't a child anymore. I recognized the signs, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained weekend business trips, the growing emotional distance between my parents. Dad was having an affair and Mum knew it. The other woman entered our lives officially when I was 15. Veronica Peterson, Dad's new executive assistant, a tall blonde woman with perfect makeup and clothes that screamed money. Dad brought her home for dinner one night, introducing her as an important new member of the team. The way they looked at each other told a different story. Jessica, now 13 and completely under Dad's influence, was charmed by Veronica's glamour and sophistication. I, however, saw how Mum's hands trembled as she struggled to serve dinner from her wheelchair, while Veronica watched with barely concealed impatience. "Let me help you with that, Elizabeth." Veronica offered, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she took over serving the meal, making a show of her efficiency. "Thank you, but I can manage," Mum replied, her dignity intact despite the humiliation. After that night, Veronica became a regular fixture in our home. She would bring files for Dad to sign, join us for dinner uninvited, and even started redecorating parts of the house, all while Mum watched her life being slowly taken over. Jessica began to mimic Veronica's mannerisms and style, distancing herself from me in the process. My little sister, who once shared all her secrets with me, now looked at me with the same dismissive gaze that Dad had perfected. "Why do you always have to be such a downer, Penelope?" she asked me once, when I refused to join in their praise of Veronica's latest decorating idea, replacing Mum's beloved family photos with abstract art. "Someone has to remember who we really are," I replied, earning a glare from Dad. Later that night, I heard shouting from Dad's study. I crept down the hallway and listened at the door. "She's becoming a problem, Thomas," Veronica's voice sharp and clear. "The older girl, she watches me like she's collecting evidence." "Don't worry about Penelope," Dad replied. "She's a temporary issue." "What does that mean?" "It means as soon as she's 18, she's out of this house. I've already started moving money where Elizabeth can't access it. Once Penelope's gone, we can convince Elizabeth to move to a care facility. She's getting worse, not better, despite what the doctors say." "And Jessica? Jessica understands what side her bread is buttered on. She'll be fine." I must have made a noise because suddenly the conversation stopped. The study door flew open and Dad stood there, his face contorted with rage when he saw me. "Eavesdropping now, I thought I raised you better than that." "You didn't raise me at all," I shot back, surprising myself with my courage. "Not since the accident. Why, Dad? What did I do that was so terrible?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not just anger, but fear. "Go to your room, Penelope. Now. Or what, you'll send me to the basement." "Oh wait, I already live there." His hand shot out before I could react, striking my cheek with enough force to make me stumble backward. The sound echoed in the hallway, followed by a gasping sob. Not from me, but from Mum, who had wheeled herself around the corner just in time to witness the blow. "Thomas," she cried out. "How could you—" Dad looked between us, his expression hardening. "She needs to learn respect." "She needs her father," Mum countered, her voice stronger than I had heard it in years. "And if you can't be that, then perhaps she's better off without you." That night, Dad didn't come home. The next morning, Mum wheeled herself to my basement room, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry, Penelope," she whispered. "I've failed you." I shook my head, kneeling in front of her wheelchair to take her hands in mine. You didn't fail me, Mom. You're the only one who still sees me. Listen to me, she said urgently. Your father, he wasn't always like this. Something changed after the accident. Something I don't understand. He blames me, I said, the realization that had been growing for years finally crystallizing into certainty. He thinks the accident was my fault. Mum started to deny it, then stopped, tears filling her eyes. I don't know why he changed, but I want you to promise me something. When you're old enough, if things don't get better here, you need to leave. Make your own life. Don't let his bitterness poison your future. What about you? What about Jessica? I'll handle your father. And Jessica? She'll find her way back eventually. What I didn't know then was that Mum was already making plans. She had started hiding away small amounts of money, grocery cash change from prescriptions, creating a secret fund for me that she kept in a hollowed-out book in her nightstand. She was preparing me for a life she knew would eventually have to exist beyond the walls of what had once been our happy home. The most chilling moment came on my 16th birthday. Dad had forgotten again, of course. Jessica was at a friend's house and Mum was at a physical therapy appointment with Nancy. I was alone in the house when Dad came home early, stumbling drunk in the middle of the afternoon. Something I had never seen before. He found me in the kitchen making myself a sandwich. You know what today is? He slurred, dropping heavily into a chair. Tuesday, I answered carefully. He laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humour. Your birthday, sweet 16. Not so sweet, is it? I remained silent, unsure what to say. You want to know a secret, birthday girl? He continued, pouring himself a glass of whiskey from a bottle I hadn't noticed he was carrying. You should have died in that accident. Not your mother half dead, you, complete dead. The words hit me like physical blows. Despite years of cold treatment, hearing him actually wish for my death was shocking. You don't mean that, I whispered. Oh, but I do. He drained his glass. Every time I look at you, I see what happened, what you did. I didn't do anything, I was just sitting in the back seat. Exactly where you shouldn't have been. His words made no sense, but the hatred behind them was crystal clear. What are you talking about? He stood up, suddenly looming over me. If you ever tell anyone how I treat you, if you ever try to make me look bad, I'll have you declared unstable. Troubled teen traumatized by the accident. One phone call and you're in a state facility until you're 18. Your mother can't stop me, she can barely take care of herself. With that threat hanging in the air, he grabbed his bottle and stumbled out. I slid to the kitchen floor, hugging my knees to my chest, and allowed myself to cry for the first time in years. I didn't tell Mum about the conversation. What was the point? She was fighting her own battles and I didn't want to add to her burden. Instead, I focused on school, throwing myself into my studies with a single-minded determination. Education was my ticket out, and I would make sure it was a first-class passage. As time went on, I became more and more invisible in my own home. Dad and Veronica no longer bothered to hide their relationship. Jessica grew increasingly distant, embarrassed to be seen with me at school. Only Mum remained my ally, but her health was deteriorating despite the care Nancy provided. The threat of being sent away hung over me like a sword. I kept my head down, stayed out of Dad's way, and counted the days until my 18th birthday, my Independence Day. The night of my 18th birthday arrived with no acknowledgement from Dad. Instead, he hosted a lavish dinner party to celebrate Jessica's acceptance into a prestigious dance program. Never mind that her acceptance letter had arrived 3 weeks earlier. The house was filled with Dad's business associates. Veronica draped over his arm like she already owned the place, and Jessica basking in the attention. I wasn't invited to the party, of course. I stayed in my basement room finishing college applications and dreaming of escape. Around midnight, when the last guests had left, I ventured upstairs to grab a leftover piece of cake. The kitchen was dark, but voices drifted from Dad's study, his and Veronica's speaking in low, urgent tones. I should have walked away, but something made me pause and listen. The paperwork for Elizabeth's transfer is ready, Veronica was saying. The facility in Oregon has an opening next month. Oregon, Dad replied. That's on the other side of the country. Exactly. Clean break, new start. With her condition worsening, she needs specialized care we can't provide here. She won't agree to go. She doesn't have to. You have medical power of attorney. Once she's settled there, we can put this house on the market. The real estate agent says we can ask $700,000 above what you paid for it. What about Penelope? What about her? She turned 18 today. Legally, she's not your responsibility anymore. And Jessica? We've already talked to Jessica. She understands this is for the best. She's excited about the new house we can buy closer to her dance school. I felt the blood drain from my face. They were planning to ship Mum across the country, sell our home, and leave me with nothing. And they had already convinced Jessica to go along with it. Without thinking, I pushed open the study door. Dad and Veronica froze champagne glasses in hand, caught in their celebration of a plan I wasn't supposed to know about. "You're sending Mom to Oregon," I demanded. Without even asking her. Dad's face darkened. "This is a private conversation. About my mother. You can't just ship her off like unwanted furniture." "Your mother needs specialized care," Veronica interjected smoothly. "The facility in Oregon is one of the best in the country, and it's conveniently 3,000 miles away." I shot back. "How often were you planning to visit? Once a year?" "Never." "That's enough, Penelope," Dad warned. "No, it's not enough. For 5 years I've watched you push Mum aside, treat me like garbage, and turn Jessica against us. And for what? So you could play house with your mistress." Dad's hand struck my face so quickly I didn't see it coming. The force of the blow sent me crashing into the bookshelf behind me. "Get out," he hissed. "Get out of my house right now." I touched my burning cheek, tasting blood where my tooth had cut the inside of my mouth. "I need to talk to Mom first. Your mother is sleeping. Thanks to her medication, she'll be sleeping until morning. By then you'll be gone." "You can't do this. I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." He grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the front door. "You're 18 now, an adult. Time to act like one." I struggled against his grip. "Let me get my things." "Veronica, grab her backpack from the basement," Dad instructed. "Put in a couple changes of clothes. Nothing more." 10 minutes later, I stood on the front porch with a backpack containing 2 outfits, my school laptop and the small amount of cash I had saved from tutoring younger students. No phone. Dad had paid for my line and had already called to have it disconnected. No car. The old Honda I had been using for school was in Dad's name. "Don't come back, Penelope," Dad said, his voice cold as the night air. "And don't try to contact your mother or sister. This family is moving forward without you." The door closed in my face with a final devastating click. I stood there for what felt like hours, unable to process what had just happened. Finally, I started walking. No destination in mind, just away from the house that had been my prison for 5 years. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, where a kindly waitress named Doris took one look at my tear-streaked face and offered me a cup of hot chocolate on the house. "Bad night, honey," she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. "You need a place to stay." Another nod. "My daughter's away at college. Got a spare room if you need it. Just until you figure things out." That night, in the small, clean bedroom of a stranger who showed more kindness than my father had in years, I made a promise to myself I would survive this. I would build a life of my own. And someday, somehow, I would find a way back to Mom. The next few months were a blur of survival. Doris let me stay with her for 2 weeks, during which time I found a job as a barista at a local coffee shop and secured a room in a shared apartment with 3 other girls. The rent took almost all my paycheck, but it was a roof over my head. I tried calling our home number repeatedly, hoping to talk to Mum, but Dad had changed it. I sent letters that came back marked "Return to Sender." I even tried going to the house once, only to find it empty with a "For Sale" sign in the yard. They were gone, leaving no forwarding address. The only bright spot was that I had already applied and been accepted to the local community college on a partial scholarship. My financial aid was approved based on my status as an independent student, allowing me to take night classes while working during the day. It was at the coffee shop that I met Michael. He was a regular, a kind-faced man in his 30s who always ordered the same thing, a medium Americano with room for cream. He left generous tips and, unlike many customers, actually took the time to ask how I was doing. When he learned I was taking business administration classes, his interest peaked. "I work at Horizon Tech," he told me one slow afternoon. "We're looking for an administrative assistant in the finance department. The pay's better than barista work, and they're flexible with student schedules." "I don't have much experience," I admitted. "But you have potential," he replied. "And sometimes that's more valuable than experience." Thanks to Michael's recommendation, I landed the job at Horizon Tech. The regular hours and better pay allowed me to move to a tiny studio apartment of my own. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. More importantly, the job gave me access to resources I hadn't had before: company computers, databases, and people with connections. Slowly, methodically, I began searching for Mum. I checked public records called hospitals and rehabilitation centres, and scoured social media for any trace of Jessica. For almost a year, I found nothing. It was as if they had vanished. Then during my lunch break one day, I decided to search for Veronica instead. That's when I found it. A small announcement in a business publication about Thomas Wilson, my father opening a new branch of his financial advisory firm in Seattle, with his wife Veronica Wilson serving as office manager. Seattle. 3,000 miles away, but not Oregon. Had they changed their plans? Or had they sent Mum to Oregon while they moved to Washington? I expanded my search to care facilities in the Pacific Northwest. It took weeks of calls often made during my breaks or late at night. Most places wouldn't confirm or deny if someone was a patient citing privacy laws. I was about to give up when I reached Lakeside Care Center in a small town outside Seattle. I'm trying to locate my mother, Elizabeth Wilson, I explained to the receptionist, expecting another polite refusal. Elizabeth, the woman replied, her tone warming. Oh, you must be Jessica. She talks about you all the time. My heart stopped. Actually, I'm Penelope, her older daughter. A pause. Penelope, but Mr. Wilson said you... Never mind. Yes, Elizabeth is here. She's been with us for about 3 years now. 3 years? I had found her. Can I speak with her? She's in physical therapy right now, but she'll be done in an hour. I can have her call you back. I gave the woman my number, then sat at my desk, unable to focus on work. When my phone rang an hour later, I answered it with shaking hands. Hello, Penelope. Mum's voice weaker than I remembered, but unmistakably hers filled my ear. Is it really you? Mum, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I found you. The flight to Seattle was the longest 4 hours of my life. I had used most of my savings for the last-minute ticket, but I didn't care. 4 years had passed since I'd seen my mother. 4 years of wondering if she was alive, if she was being cared for, if she ever thought of me. Lakeside Care Center turned out to be a pleasant facility overlooking a small lake surrounded by pine trees. As the taxi dropped me off at the entrance, I felt a strange mix of hope and dread. What if Mum had changed? What if she believed whatever lies Dad had told her about me? The receptionist, Linda according to her name tag, smiled as I approached. You must be Penelope. Your mother hasn't stopped talking about your visit since you called. She's in the garden pavilion. I followed Linda's directions through the facility to a glass-enclosed garden where residents could enjoy nature year-round. Mum sat in her wheelchair near a flowering plant, her back to me, her once vibrant brown hair now streaked with grey. Mum, I called softly. She turned and her face, thinner now with new lines around her eyes, lit up with a joy I hadn't seen since before the accident. Penelope, oh my God, my baby girl. I rushed to her, falling to my knees beside her wheelchair and burying my face in her lap as she stroked my hair. We both cried years of separation pouring out in tears. Let me look at you, she said finally, lifting my chin. You're so beautiful, so grown up. I've missed you so much, Mum. I tried to find you. I tried for years. I know you did, sweetheart. I never believed you abandoned me. We moved to a private sitting area where we could talk without being overheard. Mum's condition had stabilized. She had regained some use of her legs, but still relied on the wheelchair most of the time. The care at Lakeside was good, she assured me, but she hated being so far from where we had lived. Your father visits with Jessica twice a year, she explained. Christmas and 4th of July. He says they're too busy for more frequent trips. And Veronica, Mum's expression tightened. She came once, made it clear she was doing Thomas a favor by checking on me. Do you know why Dad moved you across the country? Officially? For specialized treatment not available back east. Actually, I think he wanted me far away from anyone who knew us as a family. Here, he and Veronica can pretend their relationship began appropriately after the divorce. There was a divorce, I asked, surprised. Yes, about a year after you left. The way she hesitated told me Dad's version of events didn't match reality. Thomas said you ran away, that you left a note saying you wanted nothing to do with any of us anymore. That's not what happened, Mom. He kicked me out, threatened me. I tried to contact you, but he blocked every attempt. She nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Thomas has become very good at rewriting history. What about Jessica? Does she believe his lies? Jessica was young, impressionable. Thomas and Veronica have shaped her view of the past. But lately I've seen doubts in her eyes when they visit. She's 23 now, old enough to question the narrative she's been fed. We talked for hours, filling in the gaps of our time apart. I told her about college, my job at Horizon Tech, my small but growing savings. She told me about her therapy, her friends at the facility, the books she read to pass the time. It was as if we were trying to cram 4 years of mother-daughter conversations into one afternoon. As evening approached, Mum grew solemn. There's something I need to give you, Penelope. Something I've kept hidden all these years. From a pocket in her wheelchair, she withdrew a yellowed envelope. I wrote this when you were 10 years old, long before the accident. I always meant to give it to you when you were older, but after what happened, I was afraid Thomas would destroy it if he found it. What is it? I asked, taking the envelope with trembling hands. The truth. About your father. I opened the envelope and pulled out a letter written in Mom's elegant handwriting, dated 17 years ago. My dearest Penelope, if you're reading this, it means you're old enough to understand the complicated nature of love and family. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago. Thomas is not your biological father. Before I married Thomas, I was in a relationship with a man named Jack Anderson, Thomas's business partner at the time. When that relationship ended and I began seeing Thomas, I discovered I was pregnant with Jack's child, with you. I told Thomas the truth before we married. He was hurt, but said he loved me enough to raise you as his own, and he has done just that. He made me promise never to tell you or anyone else. And I agreed, believing it was in your best interest to have a stable family. Jack moved away before you were born and has respected our wishes not to be involved in your life. He's a good man who made the difficult choice to step aside so you could have a complete family. Kate, I'm writing this letter now while you're still young in case something ever happens to me. I want you to know that you were born from love, raised with love, and that both men in your story, your biological father and the man who raised you, made their choices out of love for you. With all my heart, Mum. I read the letter twice, struggling to comprehend what it meant. Thomas knew. All this time, he knew he wasn't my biological father. Mum nodded. He not only knew, but he loved you as his own for years. That's why his change after the accident was so shocking to me. The man who had embraced his partner's child as his own suddenly couldn't stand the sight of you. Do you think that's why he turned on me? Because I wasn't really his? No, Mum said firmly. Thomas loved you completely until the accident. Something happened that night, something that changed him. The doctors said he suffered a mild concussion but no other injuries. I've wondered if it was more serious than they thought, if something in his brain was damaged. Or maybe the accident just gave him an excuse to show his true colours, I suggested bitterly. I don't believe that. The man who raised you for 13 years, who taught you to fish and explained compound interest to an 8-year-old, that was the real Thomas. This person he's become. I don't recognize him. What about Jack Anderson, my real father? Do you know where he is now? Mum's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Penelope. Jack died 5 years ago in a small plane crash. He was a pilot. Flying was his passion outside of business. I found out through an old friend, but I had no way to tell you then. Another loss I hadn't even known to grieve. A father I would never meet. Did he know about me? Did he ever ask about me? He respected the boundaries we set, but yes, he knew about you. Every few years, he would send a card to a post office box I kept. Just checking in, making sure you were okay. I sent him school photos sometimes. He never intruded, but he never forgot you existed either. I sat back overwhelmed by these revelations. Does Jessica know any of this? No. As far as I know, Thomas has kept that secret. Jessica is undeniably his biological child. And Veronica, I don't know what Thomas has told her. Probably nothing. He's always been skilled at compartmentalizing. Before I left that evening, Mum gave me one more piece of information, Jessica's email address. Try reaching out to her, she suggested. The worst she can do is ignore you. I promised to write to Jessica, though I had little hope she would respond. More importantly, I promised Mum I would come back to visit as soon as possible and that I would look into the possibility of moving her to a facility closer to where I lived. Don't upset your life for me, she protested. You are my life, Mum, I told her, meaning every word. And it's time we were together again. That night in my hotel room, I wrote a careful email to Jessica. I didn't mention Dad's treatment of me or the revelation about my biological father. Instead, I kept it simple. I had found Mum, I had missed both of them terribly, and I hoped we could reconnect as sisters. I hit send, then tried to sleep my mind spinning with all I had learned. Before drifting off, I made another promise to myself I would get to the bottom of what really happened the night of the accident. Something had changed my father, and I was determined to find out what it was. Over the next 2 years, my life took on a new purpose. I continued working at Horizon Tech, where I was promoted to junior financial analyst thanks to my business degree and the skills I developed. I set aside as much money as possible, saving for 2 goals: moving Mum to a care facility near me and uncovering the full truth about my father. My search for answers about the accident led me down various paths. I requested the police report, which contained little information beyond the basic single-car accident driver listed as Elizabeth Wilson, lost control on wet roads, vehicle struck a tree. No other vehicles involved, no witnesses listed. I contacted the hospital where Mom and I had been treated, but patient records from 9 years ago had been archived and were difficult to access. Without legal intervention, I couldn't afford. The insurance claim had long been settled, those records also archived. It seemed like I had hit a dead end until I received an unexpected email from Jessica. Penelope. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to respond. Your email was quite a shock. Dad told me you wanted nothing to do with our family anymore. I visited Mum regularly and she never mentioned hearing from you, so I assumed Dad was telling the truth. I'm getting married next month to Andrew Blackwell. His father is Dad's biggest client. I've been thinking a lot about family lately, and I've realized there are gaps in the story I've been told about why you left. Maybe it's time I heard your side. Would you be willing to talk? Jessica. I couldn't believe it. After 6 years of silence, my sister wanted to reconnect. I responded immediately, suggesting a video call. To my surprise, she agreed, and 2 days later, I found myself staring at the face of the woman my little sister had become. Jessica had grown into a beauty with our mother's delicate features and our father's confident posture. Her hair was styled in an elegant bob and her clothing screamed expensive taste. But underneath the polished exterior, I could see something troubled in her eyes. You look well, she said after an awkward silence. So do you. Congratulations on your engagement. Thank you. She twisted a large diamond ring on her finger. It's been a whirlwind in romance. Andrew and I met at one of Dad's client events last year. Are you happy? I asked the big sister, in me still concerned about her well-being. She hesitated just long enough for me to know the answer wasn't a simple yes. Andrew is a good man. His family is well respected. It's a good match. That's not what I asked. Jessica's carefully composed expression cracked slightly. I don't know if I remember what happiness feels like anymore, Penelope. Our family fell apart, and then you were gone, and Mum was sent away, and suddenly it was just Dad and Veronica telling me how to dress, how to act, who to date. Jessica, I never wanted to leave you. Dad threw me out on my 18th birthday. I tried to contact you and Mom for years. Her eyes widened. He told me you ran away, left a note saying you couldn't handle Mom's condition anymore and needed to find yourself. There was no note. He caught me overhearing his plans to send Mum away and sell the house. When I confronted him, he hit me and told me to get out. He hit you? Jessica looked genuinely shocked. Dad's never been violent. Not with you, maybe. I didn't say it accusingly, just stating a fact. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I believe you, she said finally. Things haven't added up for a long time. Dad's obsession with controlling everything in my life, the way he and Veronica talk about Mom like she's a burden, how they change the subject whenever your name comes up. I'm sorry you've been caught in the middle. I should have questioned things sooner. She looked down at her hands. Mum always gets this sad look when she talks about you, but Dad interrupts before she can say much. I assumed it was because your abandonment hurt her. I would never abandon Mum, or you. Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. I know that now. We talked for nearly 2 hours cautiously at first, then with increasing openness. As the years of separation melted away, I learned that Dad's business had flourished in Seattle, that Veronica had pushed Jessica into modeling rather than allowing her to pursue her interest in marine biology, and that her engagement to Andrew was more a business merger than a love match. I don't know how to get out of it now, she confessed. The wedding's in 4 weeks. Dad's invited all his important clients. Andrew's father is investing heavily in Dad's new venture. It's your life, Jess, not theirs. Is it, though? Sometimes I feel like I'm just a pawn they're moving around a chessboard. She took a deep breath. I want you to come to the wedding. I nearly choked on my tea. What Dad would never allow that. I'm not telling him. I'm the bride. I can add to the guest list without anyone questioning it. Please, Penelope. I need someone there who sees me for who I really am, not what I represent. It was a terrible idea. Showing up at my sister's wedding, coming face to face with the father who had wished me dead, confronting the woman who had helped destroy our family. It was a recipe for disaster. "I'll be there," I promised. "Just tell me when and where." Jessica's smile was worth whatever drama might ensue. "Thank you, and Penelope, I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too, little sister." After our call, I should have been anxious about the upcoming confrontation, but instead, I felt strangely calm. This was my chance to finally get answers, to look my father in the eye, and demand the truth about what had happened 9 years ago. What I didn't expect was to find an ally in my quest, one who had been waiting years for someone to ask the right questions. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a plain envelope at my apartment. No return address, just my name and address printed in blocky handwriting. Inside was a business card for Frank Williams, Private Transportation Services, and a handwritten note. "I was there the night of the accident. Call if you want to know the truth." A phone number was scrawled at the bottom. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. An older man answered on the second ring. "Frank Williams. This is Penelope Wilson. You sent me a card about the accident 9 years ago. Been wondering if you'd call." His voice was gruff, but not unfriendly. "Saw your name in the Seattle Times announcement for the Blackwell-Wilson wedding. Recognized it right away. You said you were there the night of the accident. What did you see?" "Not something to discuss over the phone. I'll be at Pike Place Market tomorrow noon by the original Starbucks. Look for an old guy with a cane and a Seahawks cap." He hung up before I could respond. The next day, I flew to Seattle again, my heart pounding with anticipation and fear. What if this was a setup? What if Dad had somehow found out I was coming to the wedding and was trying to lure me into a trap? But my need for answers outweighed my caution. I found Frank Williams exactly where he said he'd be. A weathered man in his 70s, leaning on a cane, wearing a faded Seahawks cap. "Penelope Wilson," he asked as I approached. "You look like your mother." "You knew my mother." "Only from that night." "Come on, let's find somewhere quiet to talk." We settled at a small cafe a few blocks away. Frank ordered coffee and insisted on paying. Once we were seated, he pulled a worn leather wallet from his jacket and extracted a business card. Yellow with age, the edges frayed. I was a taxi driver back then. Had my own car worked the night shift. That stormy night, I was driving about a quarter mile behind your family's car. Saw the whole thing. My breath caught. "What happened?" "Your dad was driving, not your mum like the report says. Car swerved, hit the guardrail, spun out and hit a tree. I pulled over, right away, ran to help. Your dad was in the driver's seat, dazed but conscious. Your mum was in the passenger seat, unconscious and bleeding. You were in the back, also unconscious. Dad was driving, not mum." Frank nodded grimly. "Here's where it gets ugly. I called 911, told your dad help was coming. He seemed to snap out of it, then got this panicked look on his face. Asked me if I'd seen who was driving. I said of course, he was. That's when he offered me money to forget what I saw." "Did you take it?" "I'm not proud of it, but yes, I took $500. Times were tough and I had bills to pay, but I didn't leave like he wanted. I stayed back, watched from a distance. He managed to unbuckle your mum and drag her over to the driver's seat, then climbed out and moved to the passenger side before the ambulance arrived." I felt sick. "He framed her for the accident." "Sure did. When I realized what he'd done, I tried to tell the officers at the scene, but your dad was this big-shot financial advisor in a fancy suit, and I was just a cabbie with a criminal record from my youth. They didn't believe me, especially when your dad claimed I was trying to extort money from him. So he switched places with Mom and let her take the blame. The pieces were finally falling into place. But why, even if he was driving, it was just an accident?" Frank leaned forward. I thought about that for years. Then I remembered something, the smell on his breath when I first reached the car. Whiskey. Strong enough that I noticed it immediately. He was drunk. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He was driving drunk with his family in the car. That's my guess. A DUI with injuries would have meant criminal charges, loss of his license, maybe even prison time. Not to mention what it would do to his reputation and business. So he made your unconscious wife take the fall. "And I was the only other witness," I whispered. "The only person who might remember he was actually driving." "Exactly. I tried to come forward again after I heard your mum was being blamed, but your dad had already filed a harassment complaint against me. Police told me to stay away from your family or face charges. My record made me an easy target." "So you just gave up?" I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. Frank looked ashamed. I kept the money, which made me complicit, and I had my own problems. Wife with cancer, mountains of medical debt. I convinced myself it wasn't my business, that the truth would come out some other way. He met my eyes directly. I've regretted it every day since. When I saw your name in that wedding announcement, I knew I had to try again. Why should I believe you now? He slid a yellowed slip of paper across the table. My taxi log from that night, I kept it all these years. Has the pickup and drop-off locations times everything. I was headed home when I witnessed the accident. So it's not in the official record, but the timestamp shows I was in the area. I studied the paper. It matched what I knew about where we'd been that night. My piano recital at the community centre, the accident location on Lakeview Drive. I know it's not definitive proof, Frank admitted, but it's all I have, that and my word. What do you want from me? I asked, still wary of his motives. Nothing, just to clear my conscience before it's too late. I'm not well, Ms. Wilson. Cancer. Doctors give me 6 months, maybe less. I can't die knowing I never tried to make this right. I believed him. The sincerity in his rheumy eyes, the tremor in his hand as he sipped his coffee. This wasn't a man running a con. This was someone seeking redemption. Are you willing to tell this story again at my sister's wedding in front of my father? Frank didn't hesitate. Just tell me when and where. As I left the cafe, I felt a strange combination of vindication and heartbreak. The father I had adored for 13 years hadn't just abandoned me. He had deliberately pushed me away because I was a threat to the lie he had constructed. He had let my mother suffer the guilt of supposedly causing the accident that left her partially paralyzed. He had torn apart our family to protect himself. And in 4 days at my sister's lavish wedding, I would finally confront him with the truth. The Blackwell-Wilson wedding was being held at the prestigious Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle. Jessica had arranged a guest room for me and sent my room key to the front desk, allowing me to check in without having to interact with the rest of the wedding party. I arrived the night before, slipping into the hotel unnoticed and going straight to my room. Frank Williams had confirmed he would attend as my +1 with his taxi log and a signed statement detailing what he had witnessed 9 years ago. Sleep eluded me that night as I rehearsed what I would say to my father when we finally came face to face. Should I confront him privately or wait until the public setting of the reception? Would he even recognize me after all these years? I had changed considerably since our last encounter. The scared, heartbroken 18-year-old was now a confident professional woman of 27. My hair, once long and wild, was now cut into a sleek bob. Years of working out as stress relief had toned my once lanky frame. I didn't look like the girl he had thrown away, and that was exactly my intention. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock with a cocktail hour following and then the reception. I decided to skip the ceremony itself. My goal was to confront Dad, not ruin Jessica's moment walking down the aisle. Instead, I would make my entrance during the cocktail hour when guests would be mingling before taking their seats for dinner. I dressed carefully in a midnight blue dress that was elegant without being flashy, applied my makeup with precision, and adorned myself with a simple silver necklace, the only piece of jewelry I owned from my mother, given to me on my 16th birthday. At precisely 3:30, I met Frank in the hotel lobby. He looked distinguished in a dark suit, his Seahawks cap replaced by neatly combed grey hair. "Ready for this?" he asked, offering his arm. "As ready as I'll ever be." We took the elevator to the grand ballroom level, where the sound of conversation and clinking glasses guided us to the cocktail reception. I paused at the entrance, scanning the room for familiar faces. There was Jessica, radiant in her wedding gown, standing beside a tall young man who must be Andrew. Veronica was easy to spot, her blonde hair now expertly highlighted to hide the grey her figure maintained by what I guessed were regular cosmetic procedures, draped in an expensive designer dress that shouted "Mother of the Bride" without actually being appropriate for the role. And then I saw him. Dad stood near the bar, drink in hand, laughing with a group of men in expensive suits, probably business associates. He had aged his dark hair, now silver at the temples' lines, etched more deeply around his eyes and mouth. But the confident posture, the charismatic smile, the way he commanded attention, those hadn't changed. "That's him," I murmured to Frank. "By the bar in the charcoal suit." Frank nodded. "I remember him, hasn't changed much." Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room. The plan was to approach Jessica first, to ensure she knew I had arrived, and to prepare her for what might happen. But fate had other ideas. Dad turned glass halfway to his lips, and his eyes locked with mine across the room. For a moment, confusion flickered across his face. recognition battling with disbelief. Then the glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The crash drew attention, conversations pausing as heads turned to see the cause of the commotion. In the sudden quiet, Dad's voice carried clearly. "Why are you still alive?" The words hung in the air, shocking in their hostility. Guests nearest to him shifted uncomfortably, uncertain if they had heard correctly. I moved forward, each step deliberate, until I stood directly before him. Up close, I could see the blood drain from his face, his eyes wide with what looked like genuine terror. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's been 9 years. How soon?" He backed up a step, bumping into the bar behind him. "You can't be here. You're not invited." "Actually, I am." I held up the invitation Jessica had sent. The bride specifically asked me to come. Jessica appeared at my side, her hand slipping into mine. "I invited my sister Dad, my only sister who you told me had abandoned us." Dad's gaze darted between us, calculation replacing shock. "Jessica, you don't understand. Penelope left us. She chose to walk away when your mother needed her most." "That's not true," I said calmly. "You threw me out on my 18th birthday because I overheard your plans to send Mum away and sell our home." "She's lying," Dad hissed, looking around at the growing crowd of observers. "She's always been troubled, especially after the accident." Frank stepped forward, leaning on his cane. "The accident you caused, Mr. Wilson, the one where you were driving drunk, crashed your car, and then moved your unconscious wife into the driver's seat to take the blame." The colour that had begun returning to Dad's face drained away again. "Who the hell are you?" "Frank Williams. I was the taxi driver who witnessed the whole thing. I called 911 that night. Watched you drag your wife into the driver's seat before help arrived." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Veronica pushed her way forward, her face a mask of controlled concern. "Thomas, what is he talking about?" Dad's eyes darted around like a cornered animal. "This is ridiculous. This man is clearly delusional. We should call security." "I kept records." Frank continued, pulling the taxi log from his pocket. "And I gave a statement to the police at the time, though they chose to believe you instead of a cabbie with a record. But I've carried the guilt of staying silent all these years. I'm not staying silent anymore." Jessica's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "Dad, is this true?" "Of course not," he blustered, but the conviction was gone from his voice. "This is absurd. Some conspiracy to ruin your wedding day. Then why did you ask why I was still alive?" I pressed. "Those were your exact words when you saw me. Why would you say that if you weren't hiding something?" I was shocked, surprised. "I meant, why are you here alive in person at this wedding?" "No," said a new voice, quiet but firm. We all turned to see Andrew, Jessica's groom, step forward. "That's not what you said, Mr. Wilson. I was standing right behind you. You clearly asked why she was still alive, not why she was here." Dad's facade began to crumble visibly. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment he looked like he might collapse. "It was an accident," he whispered. "The crash. I'd had a few drinks at the client dinner before the recital. Not enough to be drunk, just relaxed. It was raining. The car hydroplaned. I couldn't control it. The ballroom had gone completely silent, guests frozen in place as the drama unfolded. But moving Mom to the driver's seat wasn't an accident," I said. "Letting her take the blame, letting her believe for 9 years that she caused the injuries that left her paralyzed. That was a choice." "I panicked," Dad said, his voice barely audible. "My career, my reputation, everything I'd built, it would have been destroyed by a DUI conviction. So you destroyed our family instead." Jessica's face had gone ashen. "You let Mum believe she was responsible all these years." Dad couldn't meet her eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far. After the crash, I was going to come clean, but then the police assumed Elizabeth was driving, and it seemed easier to just let them believe that. And easier to push away the one person who was in the car and might remember the truth," I added. "That's why you turned on me after the accident, isn't it? You were afraid I'd remember you were driving." "I didn't remember at first," I continued. "The concussion wiped out my memory of that night. But you couldn't take the chance that it might come back to me someday. So you isolated me, made Mom and Jessica believe I was the problem, and finally threw me out when I became a legal adult." Veronica stepped forward, placing a restraining hand on Dad's arm. "Thomas, don't say anything more. We should talk to our lawyer before—" "You knew," Jessica interrupted, staring at Veronica in disbelief. "You knew about this." Veronica's expression hardened. I knew Thomas had made a mistake, yes, a mistake anyone could have made. I helped him protect himself from unfair persecution. Unfair persecution, I repeated incredulously. He left his wife paralyzed and let her believe it was her fault. He abandoned his daughter. He lied to everyone for 9 years. That's not a mistake. That's a series of deliberate, cruel choices. Is Mum still in that care facility? Jessica asked, her voice breaking, still believing she caused the accident that ruined her life. Your mother is well cared for, Dad said defensively. She has everything she needs. Except the truth, I countered. And her family. One of Dad's business associates, a distinguished older man, stepped away from him. I think I've heard enough. Thomas, I'll be withdrawing my investments from our venture effective immediately. Harold, wait. Dad reached out, but the man turned his back and walked away. Like a dam breaking, other guests began to move. Some leaving the ballroom entirely, others gathering in small groups to whisper among themselves. The beautiful wedding reception was disintegrating before our eyes. Andrew put his arm around Jessica's shoulders. I think we need to postpone the reception. Jessica needs time to process this. Jessica nodded gratefully, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Andrew. Don't apologize for what isn't your fault, he said, kissing her temple gently. We'll reschedule when you're ready. Veronica, seeing her carefully orchestrated social event collapsing, tried to salvage the situation. Everyone, please. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. Let's not ruin Jessica and Andrew's special day with ancient history. But it was too late. The damage was done. Dad stood alone at the bar, the circle of emptiness around him, growing as former friends and business associates distanced themselves from the scandal. I felt no triumph in his downfall, only a profound sadness for all that had been lost. 9 years of separation that could never be reclaimed. A mother who had suffered needlessly. A sister who had been manipulated and controlled. I didn't come here for revenge, I told Dad quietly. I came for the truth. Now we all have it.
At this hour,
He looked at me, then really looked at me, perhaps for the first time since the accident. I loved you once, he said, his voice hollow, before everything went wrong. I know, I replied. That's what makes this so tragic. As Jessica and Andrew announced to the remaining guests that the reception would be postponed, I slipped away with Frank. My confrontation was over. The truth was out. Now it was time to help put back together what could be salvaged of our broken family. The aftermath of the wedding confrontation unfolded like ripples in a pond, touching lives near and far. Dad's carefully constructed life began to crumble within days. Business partners withdrew their investments, clients transferred their accounts to other advisors, and the scandal became the talk of Seattle's financial community. The legal consequences followed swiftly. Though the statute of limitations had passed for charges related directly to the accident, there were other vulnerabilities in Dad's carefully constructed facade. The insurance fraud, claiming Mum was driving when she wasn't, led to an investigation. Tax discrepancies emerged during the scrutiny of his finances. His professional licenses came under review. Veronica left 3 weeks after the wedding debacle, taking a substantial settlement in exchange for her silence about other questionable business practices she had witnessed over the years. Last I heard, she had moved to Florida with a new older boyfriend who owned a yacht and didn't ask too many questions. Jessica and Andrew did eventually get married, but in a small, intimate ceremony 6 months later. By then she had begun therapy to process the betrayal and manipulation she had experienced growing up. She also started taking marine biology classes at the local university, finally pursuing the passion Dad had discouraged. As for me, I used my savings and some financial help from Jessica to move Mum to a rehabilitation centre near my apartment. The first thing I did was tell her the truth about the accident, that she had never been driving, that she had nothing to feel guilty about. She wept for hours, 9 years of self-blame releasing in a torrent of tears. I suspected something wasn't right, she admitted when she had calmed down. There were gaps in my memory of that night, things that didn't make sense. But Thomas was so insistent and the police report backed him up. Eventually, I convinced myself I must be remembering wrong because of the trauma. You didn't do anything wrong, Mom, I assured her, holding her hand tightly. The only person who should feel guilty is Dad. I'm not sure he's capable of real guilt, she said sadly. Only regret for being caught. Mum's recovery accelerated once she was free from the burden of false blame. The new facility offered innovative treatments that helped her regain more mobility than she'd had in years. Within 6 months, she could walk short distances with a walker, something her previous doctors had said would be impossible. Jessica moved to be closer to us, renting an apartment in the same building as mine. Andrew, who turned out to be nothing like his future father-in-law, had been commuted from Seattle on weekends until he could arrange a transfer to his company's office in our city. Dad reached out several times, first through lawyers with settlement offers to make things right, then with increasingly desperate personal pleas as his empire continued to collapse. I didn't respond immediately, unsure if I would ever be ready to face him again. It was Mom who suggested we give him one final chance to speak. Not for his sake, she clarified. For yours, so you can say everything you need to say and then truly move forward. She was right, of course. Closure wouldn't come from avoiding him forever. So 1 year after the wedding confrontation, I agreed to meet Dad at a neutral location, a public park with plenty of people around. Jessica decided to join me, feeling she too needed this final conversation. He looked different when he arrived, older, diminished somehow. The confident posture was gone, replaced by the slight stoop of a man carrying invisible weights. His expensive suit had been replaced by casual pants and a button-down shirt that seemed a size too large. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "We're here to listen," I replied. "That's all we're promising." He nodded, accepting the limitation. We sat at a picnic table, the three of us forming an uneasy triangle. "I've lost everything," he began. "The business is bankrupt. The house is being sold to pay legal settlements. My reputation is destroyed." "Are you expecting sympathy?" Jessica asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. Dad shook his head. "No, I don't deserve sympathy. I'm just stating facts." He took a deep breath. "I've had a lot of time to think about how we got here, about the choices I made that night and every day after." "And," I prompted when he fell silent. "And I still don't have a good explanation. Not one that would make any sense to you or even to me now. I was afraid of losing everything, so I made a split-second decision that ended up costing me everything anyway, just more slowly and painfully." "It cost us more," Jessica said. "It cost us our family." Dad nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know. After the accident, I convinced myself that if I just stuck to the story long enough, eventually it would become true, even to me. I started to believe my own lies." "That doesn't explain why you turned on me so completely," I said. "You didn't just push me away. You actively made my life miserable. You hit me. You threw me out with nothing. Because every time I looked at you, I saw my own guilt reflected back at me," he admitted. "You were the living reminder of what I'd done. And yes, I was terrified you would remember the truth someday. So you decided to make me the enemy to turn Mom and Jessica against me. So if I ever did remember and speak up, no one would believe me." Yes. The simple admission hung in the air between us. It was calculated and cruel, and I can't take it back no matter how much I wish I could. Jessica wiped away a tear. "Did you ever really love us, any of us?" Dad looked up, then his eyes wet. "I loved all of you. That's what makes this so monstrous. I destroyed what I loved most because I was too much of a coward to face the consequences of one terrible mistake." We talked for almost 2 hours, going around and around the same painful truths. Dad had no excuses, offered no justifications beyond his own fear and selfishness. He had lost everything that mattered and gained nothing from his deception. As the conversation wound down, I asked the question that had been on my mind since learning the truth about my biological father. "Did you turn on me so completely because you knew I wasn't really your daughter because Jack Anderson was my biological father?" Dad looked genuinely surprised. "No, when I married your mother, I made a choice to be your father in every way that mattered. DNA didn't change that. I loved you as my own from the moment you were born." "Then why was it so easy to throw me away?" "It wasn't easy," he said, his voice breaking. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But once I started down that path, I couldn't see a way back that didn't involve destroying myself." "So you destroyed us instead," Jessica said quietly. Dad had no response to that. There was nothing he could say to make it better to undo the damage he had caused. As we prepared to leave, he asked one final question. "Can you ever forgive me?" Jessica and I exchanged glances. It was she who answered. "I don't know, Dad. Forgiveness isn't something you're entitled to just because you finally admitted the truth. It's something we might give you someday if and when we're ready, but it won't happen today." He nodded, accepting this as fair. "Can I at least see Elizabeth once to apologize in person?" I considered denying the request, but again, it wasn't my forgiveness alone that mattered here. "I'll ask Mom if she wants to see you. If she says yes, we'll arrange it. If she says no, you need to respect that." "I will," he promised. And Penelope, Jessica, thank you for hearing me out today. I don't deserve even that much. We left him sitting alone on that park bench, a solitary figure diminished by the weight of his own choices. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a profound sadness for all that might have been. Mum did agree to see him one last time. I wasn't present for their conversation honouring her request for privacy. When I picked her up afterward, her eyes were red from crying, but there was a peace in her expression I hadn't seen in years. "Did you get what you needed?" I asked as I helped her into the car. "Yes," she said simply. "I said goodbye to the man I once loved and hello to the rest of my life." Dad pled guilty to the charges against him, receiving a suspended sentence and hefty fines that completed his financial ruin. Part of his plea agreement included full acknowledgement of what he had done the night of the accident, officially clearing Mum's name from any responsibility. In the years that followed, the three of us, Mum, Jessica and I, rebuilt our lives together. Mum continued her physical therapy and eventually regained enough strength to walk short distances with just a cane. Jessica completed her marine biology degree and began working at the local aquarium's conservation program. I advanced in my career, eventually becoming the finance director for a non-profit organisation that helped families affected by drunk driving accidents. As for Dad, we heard he moved to a small town in Oregon, where he works as a bookkeeper for a local business. He sends birthday cards each year, simple, modest cards with brief messages of good wishes. We don't respond, but we don't return them either. Some wounds take more than cards to heal. The truth I've learned from all of this is that karma isn't some mystical force that balances the universe. It's simply the natural consequence of our actions catching up to us. My father spent 9 years running from the truth, only to have it ultimately destroy everything he had built. In trying to escape accountability for one moment of weakness, he created a lifetime of regret. For myself, I've found that surviving betrayal doesn't make you bitter unless you choose that path. It can make you more compassionate, more aware of the fragility of human relationships, and more determined to build honest ones in your own life. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Dad had simply told the truth that rainy night. There would have been consequences, certainly, legal and professional repercussions that might have changed the course of his career, but our family would have remained intact. We would have faced those challenges together rather than being torn apart by lies. That's the final irony, I suppose. In trying to save himself, my father lost everything that actually mattered. And in losing everything I thought I needed, my father's love, my childhood home, the family I knew, I found my own strength and rebuilt something more authentic from the ashes. I sometimes visit this beach where we used to vacation as a family, walking along the shore and remembering those golden days before everything changed. I don't go there to mourn what was lost, but to honor the memory of love that once existed, and to remind myself that even broken things can be beautiful in a different form. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Share this with someone who might need to hear that there's life after betrayal, sometimes a better, more authentic life than you ever imagined possible. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the truth may be painful, but living in lies is a prison of our own making.